Hello out there. Welcome to part two of the Alienation R2 Blue Label review. If you hadn't seen the one before, go ahead and go back and take a look at it. That's just mainly mounting the rim and kind of explaining the tire. Sorry it took so long. It's been kind of difficult getting enough riding time in due to weather, my body, and just availability. So we're going to have some scenes where riding some pump track, doing some gates, and riding on a track. I'd say I gave it enough sessions to really know exactly how these tires really feel. The big thing about them is probably they're a much lighter tire than the original R2s, as I stated in the previous video. Again, let me preface this by I have no Alienation affiliation whatsoever. They sent me what I learned were actually samples, so they're not actually the production tire. They're basically, lack of a better word, the guinea pig tire. So I was basically a guinea pig for this. I did have a few different little issues here and there. First thing was getting them to seal onto the Malice rims. It wasn't difficult to get them to seal. I just, had to retape it and kind of go about how I was going to tighten the stem. I did notice a little bit of leakage from the actual bead itself, like out the sides, but once the sealant got in there real well, that kind of went away. The other issue I had is some of the rubber rings kind of near the bead kind of started coming off a little bit. When I explained it to Alienation, that's when I found out that these were samples and that, everything that was found out on these tires is going to end up getting fixed. There was one small delamination underneath the tread, which created kind of a bubble underneath one of the treads on the tire. Other than that, though, these tires ran phenomenal. I mean, if you haven't ran tubeless tires in BMX racing, then you don't know what you're missing. And also you don't know what you don't know. Some people are just completely stuck on having tube tires, especially now that they make the really light urethane tubes. But where we live at, there is a lot of goat heads, and I run tubeless, my daughter runs tubeless, and she's at least resealing a tire from running over goat heads at least two times per session almost. So I am running on a cruiser, the Alienation Blue Label R2 24x175s on the front and the rear. At first I ran it just on the rear, and then I put one on the front, and I ran them like that the rest of the time. So tubeless's disadvantages and advantages. Obviously the disadvantage is just all the amount of pain that you go through to kind of figure out the tire and the sealant, and it's a high pressure sealant. And for those guys out there that are going to say burping is an issue, it's not an issue as soon as you go over 30 psi, really. But I'm running them at 70 psi, both front and rear. At one point I was running 80 as well, just to see how that was working. Really, it's, to me, just the feeling of tubeless tires. They if you're running 70 psi, it rolls like you're running 90 psi, but it feels like you're running like 50 psi. It's just a strange feeling. You got to get on them to really feel it, and once you get used to them, there is a significant advantage in grip, gripping through corners, gripping just around the track, especially when you get really sketchy through sections. The front tire actually grips really well. Um, your bonking manuals, or, if you're like me, you're just riding sloppy, or getting tired and riding even sloppier. But the grip on these particular R2 blue labels is really good. I mean, it's really outstanding. Um, the PSI that I was running, like I said, was like 70 PSI, 75 PSI, ran 80 a few times. But the limit is 85 PSI. So if you put it all the way to 85 and then you're riding on an extremely hot day, you're most likely going to blow the tire off the rim. Then you're just going to be covered in sealant. So my recommendation would be probably run about 70 PSI and then check your pressures every once in a while if it's super hot outside. The ride feeling. Now, as far as, because of my age and because of all the injuries that I've sustained and because my back is so messed up, I notice a huge difference between a tubed tire and a tubeless tire, just because the sidewall is kind of supple. It makes you feel like it just absorbs more vibration, and which is easier on my wrists, easier on my elbows and shoulders and back and everything else that's been broken and repaired and surgically repaired. So the riding feeling is great. I mean, they feel real good. It doesn't even feel like I need to go to a 195 on the front, which I did on my class bike when I used to ride that a bunch, or at least try to ride it a bunch. Cornering, you can, if it's an asphalt corner, you can go as low as you feel like going. I mean, as long as you got your outside pedal dropped and you're really just trying to rail it through. As far as on dirt, dirt, as long as it's not wet and it's a decent surface and there's not like tons of dust everywhere, or tons of like loose dirt everywhere, it's going to hold. I mean, especially if you're heavier. I mean, I weigh 220 pounds with all of my kit on, and I'm running it at 70 PSI, and it doesn't feel mushy. It doesn't feel like like if I'm running a tube tire and I'm running at like 60 PSI or something, it doesn't even feel like 70 PSI. It's just a different feeling, and you got to get used to it. My suggestion would be, anybody that wanted to try tubeless out would be, use your own bike. Take somebody else's wheels that have tubeless in them that'll kind of match up to your bike, and utilize those if you really just want to try them. Otherwise, you can go out and try to purchase a set. So making mistakes. I mean, I make a lot of mistakes on the track. I just don't ride enough to be super fluid or super smooth. And plus, my high competitive days are kind of over, where I'm pour most of my effort into my daughter. And my riding style has always been a little stiff and a little like herky-jerky. I case a lot of jumps. I am really hard on tires and rims. So, I mean, the tires are holding up pretty well with me at 70 PSI, and I haven't just ripped apart the rims yet. I've tacoed rims just because of casing jumps. So, good. The Malices have held up pretty well, and the tubeless tires have obviously held up pretty well. So I'm pretty pleased with that, as far as the ability to just ride as hard as I can. And you've seen it in the video already. Sometimes I'm short on everything. Sometimes I get sketchy through things. I bonk manuals, and the clips that you saw are not my highlight reel. They're just a random days when I decided to go ride and somebody was there to record. So in closing, I would say that these R2 blue labels, once they get into production, I think they'll be a really good tubeless tire, whether 20-inch or 24-inch. And like I'd stated in the previous video, Alienation is the only ones that make a 24-inch racing tire. So, and that's their TCS, under their TCS system. I would say, like, we have a mentality in BMX, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's always good to try something new too to see if it works. If you got like a little bit of spare time between nationals or between something else, especially if you're getting up there in age, or if you just want like just better cornering. You don't really get as much chatter, like especially rear wheel chatter coming around corners. Like even if you're diving low, I'm not the fastest rider in the world, but your track speed is the first thing that leaves you. After having significant layoffs from riding. So I would say if you're interested in getting these tires, you're riding a cruiser, Alienation is definitely the only game in town that makes the 24-inch tubeless tire. Otherwise, a 20-inch, there's a few other ones. There's IRC, there's Michelin, there's Oxygen, and I think one other one. I mentioned it in the previous video. But it's been a good time riding them, and they've actually saved me a few times from going down in the rhythm section. Our track is road based. It's not really so it kind of has a slick surface. So if you get sketchy and you start to slide your front wheel and it doesn't catch, you're going down. I often felt that a lot in tubed tires. That once your front wheel starts going, it's over. Tubeless tires, sometimes you can save it, sometimes not. But other than that, the tires have saved me quite a few times. So I'll end it here. It's been a little bit long for a review. I know you're probably staring at the same picture for a really long time. But thank you for making it this far. And thanks for watching, and hope you learned something out of this. Like and subscribe if you want to. Thank you.